Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Merlin Season 2, Episode 7, The Sins of the Father. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of exactly what happened within this episode. So the episode starts with Morgause fully decked out in armor, killing her way into the castle where Uther is currently performing a knighting ceremony for some new knights. And when she arrives, she throws down her gauntlet, which challenges Arthur to a duel. He then requests to know the identity of his challenger, and she takes off her helmet, revealing that she is a girl. Arthur is uncomfortable about the potential of fighting a woman in combat, and so he sends Merlin to try to get her to back out, but she refuses and says that she is going to fight Arthur the next day. Morgana, meanwhile, speaks to Gwen about how Morgause feels familiar, but she doesn't know that she's ever met her before. Then we have the duel occur, where Arthur does in fact lose, and of course everyone thinks it's his chivalry that made him lose. That's his excuse as well, to try to keep his pride at losing, but Morgause spares his life at the end of the duel in exchange for him accepting her challenge within a few days. That evening, Morgana goes to find her because of that familiar feeling, and Morgause confirms that they haven't met, but that she's glad they've met now, and offers to give her a bracelet as a gift to help her sleep better. Morgana refuses, however, Morgause that night then sneaks into her room and leaves the bracelet, which she enchants, on her, like on the end of her bed, and Morgana does end up having the best night's sleep she's ever had. All of her nightmares are calmed, and so she then starts to wear the bracelet. This, of course, is when Gaius gets a better look at the bracelet and realizes that it is a bracelet from the House of Gloriolus, which is basically revealing Morgause to be Morgana's half-sister, whom Morgana is unaware of, but that Gaius knew because he had helped to sneak her out after her birth and give her to the high priestesses, who were the ones who raised her. Uther decides that Arthur can't be trusted to follow through on this challenge, and tries to convince him to break his word, which Arthur refuses to do. He locks him into his room, which Merlin then helps him to escape from, and they then go to visit Morgause. And Morgause, before she left, enchanted Arthur's horse to know the way to her hidden castle that's hidden behind a waterfall in an adjoining kingdom. So obviously Arthur and Merlin go there. Morgause tests Arthur, confirms that he's a man of his word, then brings him into her castle where she performs a spell that summons Ugraine's ghost. And Ugraine basically tells Arthur about how Uther had knowingly used magic to sacrifice her life so that his line could continue, resulting in Arthur's birth by magic and her death. And this, of course, greatly affects Arthur, who was previously unaware of this, and he basically rides home angry and immediately goes in to attack his dad. And he throws down his gauntlet to basically make his father fight him, but his father refuses to pick it up, that he's not going to fight his son. But Arthur continues to attempt to kill him, and just as he is about to do so, Merlin runs in and basically talks down Arthur and, tells him it was a lie, Ugraine wasn't actually there, it was an illusion, Morgause is an enchantress, blah, blah, blah. And Arthur then does kind of cool his head, stop attacking his father. He makes his father swear to him that he did not did not use magic to kill his mom, and Uther does say that, well, he doesn't say it in so many words, but he basically says he loved his mother and he would never have knowingly done anything to hurt her. And so Uther's life is spared. They make up. But then at the end of the episode, Morgause is looking into her seeing crystal and sees Arthur and Uther having a good time and appears to be angry at this. And that is where we end. Now that we've been reminded about what happens within this episode, it's time to rank the episode. As always, we're going to be ranking on our mostly objective ranking list, which uses set values to determine the score, and then the personal ranking list after that, which uses my opinion to create the score. So now we'll start with our mostly objective rank values in order to rank this episode. And we will start with our multi-episode supporting character introduction, which is Igraine Pendragon. She's mentioned in a lot of episodes because she was Arthur's mother, but she does appear in a ghostly form in 2 episodes in the series, this one being the first of the 2 episodes she appears in order to inform Arthur of the circumstances of his birth. We then get our multi-season supporting character introduction, which is Morgause, who again is a recurring character throughout a few seasons of the series, and is Morgana's half-sister and an antagonist because she was raised by the High Priestess and is a sorcerer, and obviously Uther is against sorcery, so they'll automatically be at odds. We then have our multi-season main character development, which is that Arthur does learn the truth about the circumstances of his birth. Now, I do want to honorably mention the fact that Morgana was given a bracelet that is magical that helps with her nightmares. I don't think it's a big enough development to actually be worth points, and while we as the audience know that Morgause is her half-sister, Morgana doesn't yet, so that development will of course come later, which is why I'm not including it in this episode's scoring. But I do want to honorably mention or acknowledge that those kind of small developments did happen. They just aren't yet big enough for points or will be revealed to the character it actually impacts later. And then that brings us to 9 points positive, but we do have 1 negative. Now with this, I wasn't 100% certain that I wanted to add it, but I feel like there were a few little things that kind of added up into a negative messaging or behavior that would be worth the point. So first, of course, is the fact that, Arthur and even Uther to a certain extent, or even Merlin, when Morgause is revealed to be a woman, despite the fact that she killed like 5 guards to get into the castle, Uther acknowledges that she probably has skills, so Arthur can't let his guard down. Arthur, however, does do so, and is really embarrassed about being beaten at swordplay by a woman, and when he finds out that she's a sorceress, he then says, oh, she must have used magic, and even Merlin's like, I don't think she did, but he's sure of it, and I'm like, not, like, for that time period, well, actually, even in modern times, most likely a man would beat a woman, so a woman beating a man is a very big shock, but I feel like the whole point that they had to make a point that she was a girl and that he was fighting women and that he lost to a woman as if it was a big deal or something special points to the obvious looking down on of females, but at the same time, it is scientifically backed that men tend to be stronger. So the fact that Morgause did win with her skill and Arthur having supposedly been somebody who is supposed to have been skilled, it is a bit of a big deal. So I understand why they made a note of it special, but I feel like they could have made a note on her skill and how her skill allowed her to overcome a biological disadvantage as opposed to, you know, bringing down Arthur because he lost to a girl. So there was that. Then, of course, There's the fact that Uther sort of lies. So we have learned in previous episodes that Uther was aware of the cost of the spell that Nimue had done, that he knew the price of a life was a life. He just didn't know it was going to be Ugraine's life that was taken. He thought he was sacrificing some nobody commoner that he didn't know. He didn't realize it would be Arthur's mom that died, Ugraine who died. So in this, he's kind of gaslighting Arthur, saying like, "No, I didn't." He says like he would never have chosen to kill his mom. He would never have hurt his mom. He loved his mom. But he doesn't exactly deny the fact that he used magic to conceive Arthur, and we know from previous episodes that he did know the cost of conceiving Arthur with magic, just not who that cost would take. And once he found out who it was and lost his wife, that's when he went crazy and decided to kill everybody who had anything to do with magic. But Arthur, of course, is led to believe, based on the conversation at the end of this episode, that magic wasn't used in his birth and his dad didn't do that. And so it is a form of gaslighting, if not outright lying, because Uther doesn't say outright that he didn't use magic. He just says that he never would have willingly or chosen to harm his mother because he loved his mother so much. Which is true. He did not know it was Ugraine that he was sacrificing. He thought it was a nobody, but he did know that he was sacrificing somebody to conceive Arthur and have Arthur be born. So, half-truth. And anyways, all of that is worth the -2 points in my opinion. Which brings this episode to a 7 out of 10. Which now brings us to our Season 2 rankings so far in our mostly objective list. And in first place, we have The Once and Future Queen, The Curse of Cornelius Sagan. This episode came in third, The Sins of the Father. The Nightmare Begins, Lancelot and Guinevere, Beauty and the Beast, and then in seventh was The Witchfinder. Now, as for my personal observations on the episode, I do find that Merlin has a real problem with walking into random people's rooms without knocking. Now, sometimes he's trying to be sneaky, and that makes sense, but in this case, he was legitimately sent to Morgause by Arthur to try to get her to withdraw from the tournament. This is a woman's room that is supposed to be a private space, like her guest room. It's late at night. She could be doing anything in there. And he just like waltzes in without even knocking, and she has to like bring out her sword and like nearly runs him through because he decided that he should just walk in. And I find that he does that quite often, where he will be like sent to somebody's room to give them a potion or to give them a message, and he'll just walk right in. We've also seen that like in season 1, the one scene with Morgana where he walked in, she thought he was Gwen, and then she proceeds to almost get changed in front of him, and it's like, maybe you should just knock first. Or at least, like, even if you're gonna waltz in, at least, like, knock and then waltz in so that they know somebody's there and it's not just, like, randomly their door opening and then there's a person. Because he almost died. Which, honestly, now that I'm thinking of it, we can include that in the -2 for the negative messaging or behavior because really, it's just polite to knock on somebody's door. We then, of course, have, the bracelet, which is part of Morgana's father's family, where it is revealed by Gaius to the audience that Morgause is Morgana's half-sister, though again, she doesn't know that yet. But also we see that Morgause says that the bracelet actually belonged to her mother, which is the same as Morgana's mother. And there's that feeling of familiarity that Morgana has with Morgause. And of course, the leaving of the bracelet hints towards Morgause's return later. And Morgause has kind of replaced Nimue as the high priestess. She even has, when they go to visit her at the castle, like the red dress, which seems to be the calling card of the high priestess, because even Nimue, when she was at the Isle of the Blessed, also was always seen in a red dress, which I think is interesting that they kind of have a uniform, even though they're different styles of dresses, different quality of dresses. There is the fact that they are both in red dresses. There also was a very standout comedic scene. I didn't think it was like iconic or memorable. Like honestly, I forgot that it existed. But once I saw it again, I it had me laughing out loud for some time because it was that hilarious. Merlin has to help Arthur escape, so he decides he's going to let him down the window. He goes in to meet Gaius and pretends to be grinding herbs or something in a mortar pestle and enchants a rope to crawl up his pant leg and it proceeds to like grunt a bit and like draw Gaius's attention with the sounds he's making because he's got like a rope probably giving him rope burn going up his pants. He then visits Arthur, and Arthur comments on the fact that he looks like he's getting fat, and then Merlin lifts up his shirt, showing that he has a rope tied around his midsection. Merlin then puts on gloves to prevent rope burn on his hands, and starts to lower Arthur out the window, and naturally is not quite strong enough to hold Arthur, even though he assured Arthur that he was. And then Arthur's about halfway down the wall, and Merlin's like, "There's no more rope." And Arthur warns him not to let go, but Merlin's weak. The rope slips, and obviously Arthur then crashes down, luckily not a large enough fall to actually harm him, but he does land in a horse's excrement. So there is that. And then, of course, they then get onto the trail, and Merlin doesn't know where they're going. Arthur doesn't know where they're going, but the horse that Morgause enchanted knows where they're going. And there's several little jokes and jibes about the fact that they are following a horse to this location of the challenge. They're accosted by the knights of the other kingdom, which is how we as the audience find out that they have moved out of Camelot and into somebody else's realm, where they have now defeated the knights of that were just doing their job to protect that realm because, the prince of another country is just randomly going through their kingdom. So I felt a bit bad for them, to be honest. Of course, the scene with Igraine, I feel like she was pretty solid for supposedly a conjuring of a ghost. Like she was able to hug Arthur, which I felt was kind of like, you're saying that you're bringing her, like you're communing with her from the dead, that she is a ghost, yet she is solid enough to hug Arthur. It just felt like a bit of well, I guess poltergeists are able to hug people, and she was summoned by magic, so maybe it was the magic that made her solid. I mean, in Charmed, when they summon ghosts, if the ghost steps out of like the circle, it does turn solid. So there is a precedent set for some ghosts to become solid. So I'll forget about that as a negative. Obviously, his immediate jump to "I'm gonna kill my dad" after finding out he used magic to give birth, like that took your grain's life to give for her to give birth to him, was a bit extreme of a reaction. I mean, I understand that Arthur will have an idealized idea of his mother because his father obviously loved his mother a lot, and he would have grown up knowing that she died giving birth to him, but hearing probably stories from other courtiers and stuff about what a wonderful person she was. So he has like an idealized attachment to her, but at the same time, this is your dad who raised you, your dad who's been there your entire life, your dad whom you've trusted up to this point. You would think on the ride back that maybe some of that affection for like his actual present parent. I mean, obviously, Grain was not present through no fault of her own, but what I mean is that the parent who raised him, that he should have some sort of grace or trust for, to at least hear out his side. Like, yes, go back, confront him with the information, but to immediately go in and be like, "I'm going to literally kill you right now," and actually attempt to do so was, I think, a bit excessive of a reaction. The confrontation was reasonable, but the I want to kill the only remaining parent I have because a parent that's long dead told me that they were the reason for it, despite the fact that I have all of the history, the memories, the trust in the with the present parent who raised me, and like that doesn't seem to factor in at all. Bit suspicious to me. I feel like they could have handled that a little bit better as far as keeping Arthur within a reasonable range. And it was like, ironically, Merlin who was the one who had to convince him by lying to him to not kill his dad, which also I feel like him wanting to confront his dad, him being angry at his dad, him even like looking at his dad differently going forward would all be reasonable in my opinion. But I think the killing of him, the needing Merlin to stop him from killing him, that there was like no point in which his natural like inclination to maybe hear both sides, like his natural fairness came into play or anything like that. He meets a sorceress, she summons a ghost that tells him things, and then just immediately I'm gonna go kill the parent who raised me, the parent who gave me everything I have, the parent who has loved me all this time. I'm like, like I said, I feel like the confrontation I'm repeating myself at this point, but I'll repeat it one more time. The confrontation makes sense. The lack of trust going forward would make sense. Even the seeing his dad in a different light and seeing sorcerers and magic in a different light would make sense. I just think it doesn't make sense that his immediate thought and the thought he got stuck in would be kill my dad. Like, I just think that's a bit too excessive, too far, too unrealistic, in my opinion. And since this is the personal rating, my opinion does matter. So, all of that being said, I did decide to rank this episode as a 7 out of 10. I think it was a strong episode, it was good, but also there were some aspects of it that I wasn't as fond of. So, that being said, our season 2 ranking so far on our personal ranking was in first place The Nightmare Begins, The Curse of Cornelius Sagan, Beauty and the Beast in third. This episode came in fourth, The Sins of the Father. Then we have The Witchfinder, Lancelot and Guinevere, and The Once and Future Queen. Which now brings us to our series ranking so far, where we will be ranking each of the seasons against each other. On our mostly objective ranking, Season 1 ended with a score of 69.23%, and Season 2 so far has earned 41 out of a possible 120 points. On the personal side, Season 1 came in with 66.92%, and Season 2 so far has gathered 43 out of a possible 120 points. With that, we have now rewatched and ranked Merlin Season 2 Episode 7, The Sins of the Father. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.